This podcast is a conversation with playwright, director and creator Neil LaBute. In May 2022, Hit Copenhagen Theatre presents his play The Money Shot, a dark comedy about two odd couples in LA trying to negotiate the terms of Karen Stevens' saucy upcoming film scene. Thank you very much for joining me. Today is Mr. Neil LaBute. The acclaimed playwright, producer, director and creator of multiple shows. And of course, I'm so happy to have you because you are the creator of The Money Shot that we're playing in Copenhagen. I don't know how much you can say about your current project.
Oh, I'm just getting ready to start one. Yeah, I'm starting this movie called Fear the Night in Los Angeles. And I guess that's about all I can say, really.
Can you feel like the post-COVID situation has affected your work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really feel post. I mean, there's certainly a loosening of things, and you see people without masks, but because I'm on a project, we certainly still have very strict. We had to have COVID tests this weekend before working next week, and we're wearing masks, and so it still feels very much like being a part of that world still, without it having changed that much. So I suppose if I was sitting at home or going just to the supermarket, where businesses can make a choice whether they want you to wear a mask or not, then it might feel a little different, but it still feels very much like part of life, everyday life for me right now.
We still had a few restrictions, and now we are playing, but the audience, they haven't really picked up that it's okay to go to the theatre.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes people nervous. I mean, the theater is one of those places where, like a movie, even probably even more so than a movie theater, especially, and for us, like say Broadway, which is trying to sell 1,000 tickets a night as opposed to 100 tickets a night or that sort of thing. You're cramming people together, and it was kind of uncomfortable before all this. So now, and it was, if you heard a cough in the audience, it was annoying. Now you're frightened.
Were you able to use that the whole, 2 years actually, into your writing and creating a new piece?
Yeah, I did some writing during that time, and talk to people about let's do something in a little bubble. Let's try and do something about what's happening right now, or let's try and do something that's really small and contained. I worked on a couple of film projects during that time, and but if in a way it was interesting as well to feel sort of like back at the beginning of your career, where you're writing things and don't know if people are ever going to see them or if they're ever going to be produced. You're just writing because you like writing, which is, for me, I think it's a good thing to never lose, that you only write if somebody pays you, or if that's not the way I went into this. I went into it because I had stories and I wanted to tell them, and I would tell them to whoever wanted to hear them. So I would hope that I always stay in that place rather than the other one that's only driven by commerce.
But you do have like such a variety of work. I mean, your body of work is substantial, and it ranges from comedy to, I think most Danes will know you from creating the series Van Helsing, which is quite a different environment.
Very different, yeah. And that was something that I might not have come to on my own either. There's a point early in my career where I kind of said, I'm open to doing other things rather than just things that I write myself. Even though in the end, I ended up helping them create that series. It wasn't my original idea. People came to me and said, hey, what do you think about this? Do you like vampires? And I had adapted Dracula before and always liked that world. So the idea of this kind of interesting take on vampires was fun. It was fun to go off and do something that I hadn't done before. Tell a number of stories about the same character, and to see if you could tell a story, in a matter of 50 episodes rather than just 1 2-hour episode. and to run a show, which I hadn't done before. So to be responsible for everything from, the very first idea through to the editing, all that was not unlike being a film director, which I had done, but, over a mass period of time. So all those experiences are great. Whether the product ends up being exactly what you want, the experience is always the thing that I value. I love the process. And so getting a chance to do that was great. So, I've dipped my directing hand in a lot of different pools, and my writing has been pretty consistent in terms of the stuff I've been interested in. But even then, I've adapted books. I've done adaptations of plays that existed, in the canon, Wojciech and Miss Julie and Uncle Vanya and different things like that. Written original stuff, a lot of short plays and short films
and short films,
it's hard. It's hard when what you do. I'm not a painter, so I can't just go off to my little hut and paint and be satisfied with, oh, look, this picture is done, and now all it takes is an audience to look at it. Unfortunately, often what I do, because it requires performance and an audience and all those things, even after you've finished something, which feels nice, like, oh, look, I've got a screenplay, I've got a play, to get it to fruition, to get it on stage, to get it on screen, there's a lot of time, but also a lot of money. Other people have to believe in you and want to do it. And so that satisfaction of completion, is interrupted at various stages by, oh, and the next part is we have to raise the money, and then we have to find the people to be in it, and then we've got to produce it, and then it's got to get out there, and who's going to see it? Is it going to get into a festival? There's always constant questions, as opposed to, I painted this picture, come on over and take a look, or it'll be at the museum or wherever it is. It's like, that is now done. It's going right on to the exhibition phase of its life. It's a little harder. I guess I've written some short stories and had those published. I guess that's as close as I've come to that sort of like directly into an audience's hands. From, I wrote this, now it's published, it's in a magazine, you can read it. But then you don't have that contact with that audience either. It's not like you get to stand in the back of the theater and watch. You can't control the reaction. I don't know how your director does it, but when I'm directing, I go to the show and I watch from the back so I can see the audience and I can see the show, and I can tell directly how connected those two things are. Is the audience really, watching the show? Are they connected? Are jokes missing? Or are they working? And every night you can feel the difference.
That's what I love about
being out there. What's that?
That's what I love about being an actress on stage, is that you can refine everything from every evening. The different pace, feel the room, work the room. I know that our director, Jeremy M. Thomas from the hit Copenhagen Theatre, he's going to redirect the money shot. Because now everything we've done it once and we've rested the show and now we're picking it up, but we're not just.
And where did you do it first?
We performed it here in Copenhagen as part of the Queer Theatre Festival.
Part of the festival, but now it'll be in Copenhagen again?
It will be in Copenhagen, but in a more traditional setting and run.
Okay.
We rehearsed it in Mallorca. Which was great. Yes. So we rehearsed it.
Sounds like a good place to go.
Yes, it was very hard for me to rehearse it outside because it was in a residential area. Actually, it's the villa you can see in the background. We rehearsed it, and we were rehearsing full force. And for those of you who don't know the money shot, we swear a lot. So all these poor people living in this beautiful residential area would hear us like, fuck you. And from the minute I read it, I was like, oh my God, how does he know how the business works, how we feel about everything? Every line is razor sharp.
Being in the business, I guess, that's the thing.
But also for the audience who are not actors or in the business, there's all the things you hear about the business, like the cutthroat and the self-doubt and the self-loathing and the begging for a part and trying to become someone. It's in every word you've written. So that's why we're so thankful that you're willing to participate in this, because we really want to make sure that the Copenhagen audience comes to the show and experiences your work in the original language.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I've asked each actor to write a question for you and each character. So
fantastic.
It's like meet your maker. And the first question is from Mika Chantal Delaurent. She plays Missy, and she would like to ask, does Steve and Missy love each other? And is it the situation that flips her, or has she been sharp-witted all along?
Good question. I'm, as a writer, I guess both as a writer and a director, I'm very keen on letting people color inside the lines and outside the lines. You know, I create a world, and if I haven't given them something explicitly and said, this is the case, this is what I think is true, I like them to be able to kind of like together find that thing, you know. So for me, it's worth knowing the actors and letting them say, where do you think you're at? Do you think that I would like to believe yes, because I think then the stakes are much higher, that if they don't love each other, then there's not that much to lose, you know. But like in a normal relationship, if you're not in love, then it's much easier to say goodbye. But I think love would at a stake would be an important thing there for me. But again, I don't think it's something that I wrote explicitly in the text, and so it's easy for someone to wonder about that. So it'd be fun for me to watch and see how it reads from their playing it. But I think definitely in the first production that we did in New York, you knew that there was a love there, but that didn't stop you from making mistakes or saying things you didn't want to say, as like any relationship. And I think Missy, she's like Walt Whitman's, she contains multitudes. She's I think a lot smarter than you might give her credit for her looks and youth and all those things that we both envy and dismiss in people sometimes. We think, oh, she couldn't possibly know what she's talking about, or hasn't lived long enough, or doesn't understand. I think Missy understands a lot, actually, that's going on, and lets everyone know that by the end of the play. But I think she's a pretty shrewd customer.
I think so too, and she's played that way. And now the character Missy would like to ask you, how does Neil LaBute see her dance? She, Missy, our character, describes the current choreography as a sexual cheerleader dance, half possessed and with pug sounds.
That's one of those things that's, it's you're doing it in a vacuum when you create these things. You imagine something a certain way, and it's inevitably going to be different once you bring in a choreographer and you have an actor and that sort of thing. That was the case for us in New York. And the piece of music you choose to use, all those things, are important. But I just wanted it to be kind of outlandish, because I was doing a riff on a play that I really like and an author that I like. So the idea that there would be a musical number based on one of his more famous kind of somber works just made me kind of laugh.
It's a very vigorous dance, and we warm up every night.
Vigorous is a good word.
Yes,
we did very much the same.
Also, the biggest laugh we've ever had is your line, or some Von Trier shit. Of course, everyone loves that in Denmark. Dina Rosenmeyer would like to ask, are the characters based on certain people, or are they inspired by many actors?
Well, good question, because normally for most plays, if you were saying, hey, is this based on anything, I would clearly say, no, not really. I tend to make stuff up. This one, however, was a story, and it's different because it's not the characters like they're not based on the actual actors from the story that I heard, but the event of being asked to have a sex scene on film came from something. So I'll explain that in that years ago, there was a film called Intimacy that was directed by a French director named Patrice Charot. And Mark Rylance was in it and Carrie Fox. And it was based on Hanif Kureishi short stories. Really well done, but there's at least one sex scene in there that was actually performed in the movie. And when I was in England and I was working on a play, an assistant director mentioned to me this kind of, not apocryphal, but a story where they actually got together as actors with their partners to talk about what everybody was comfortable with them actually doing. Like the director wanted them to perform a sex act, and so what was okay, what was not okay. And so I imagine this is crazy. They're sitting around having dinner, as English and Australian people like to do, very, ordering tea. And in the meantime, they're saying, so can we do this or not do this? Or, so I had no specifics about what really happened, but just the event was so kooky to me that I thought, that's a play, right? That's a play. So I didn't base those, this Steve on Mark Rylance, but the idea of what happened there to Mark Rylance and to Carrie Fox. So it's kind of a yes and no. The characters aren't based on them, but the event itself did take place. And that's where the idea for The Money Shot came from.
And the character Karen would like to know if she reconciles with Beverly or she ends up with Steve or all alone. Such a Karen question, isn't it?
Falls firmly into my world of not my responsibility. Haven't thought about it. Where I end a play or begin a play, that's the world of life for them. Even though I may discuss things that have happened in the past or hopes they have for the future or whatever, my ownership ends with the two of them sitting there listening to their partners, and that's as much up to her as it is to me, as me, and maybe even more so. And the audience, the audience. If you lean a certain way, your glass is always half full, then you'll think, oh, well, maybe it'll work out. Maybe this is good for her and Karen, and she and Bev will be together. And if not, maybe it's better that Karen's a loner. Think whatever you want. If you're a romantic or a cynic, whatever, that's okay. You come up with your own ending. But that ending is where it stops for me. Is these were the results of the evening that you had. These people ended up upstairs and you're sitting and listening to them, and that's the end of it. So she knows as much as I do, if not more. I take the not in America it's the fifth. Anywhere else it's when Beckett said somebody asked him about what is Waiting for Godot mean, I think, and he was like, why are you asking me? I just wrote it. So it's one of those kind of things that I wrote this much and their lives are this big, so you figure out the rest. Unless I do a sequel, then you'll know.
And the next question is from the actor Dom Voss playing Steve. Have you ever considered making The Money Shot into a TV series?
I didn't. I considered making it into a film because I liked how self-contained it was. That you could get together at some estate somewhere and plop these four actors down and really play this out. And that would be fun. And so we played the casting game and talked about who would be who. And the funny thing is, even on stage, for a while we were talking about doing it on Broadway, and we did a lot of readings with a lot of different actors, but there were a lot of American male stars or actors don't want to look bad, don't want to be, cuckolded, don't want to be, don't want to play versions of themselves, so getting them to play that part was harder than I thought it might be. It was hard to get a guy who could make fun of himself, who could get out there and really, or the guys who were the most like Steve didn't find it that funny. You know what I mean?
That's funny.
They played it more straight as they read it, and that made it even funnier.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It didn't make them want to play it,
Yeah.
So and getting bested by Bev in the wrestling, and there were a lot of things that didn't sit well with them. So it was relatively high. I had to ultimately have a very good friend who I'd worked with for a number of years end up playing that part, because he's a real actor and a real man, and so he knew the value.
He wasn't afraid of playing.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of that. Every night he brought it on. The more he brought it on, the more he could do to make you think Steve was just the biggest blowhard, and had fun with the wrestling, and had a big gag where he threw up afterwards, like into the hot tub, and all that. He couldn't get enough. So I mean, that's the kind of guy you want to work with, not the one who's worried about his fragile little ego.
Exactly.
But yeah, harder than I thought to get that cast. So
I can assure you that our Tom Foz, he is exactly a dream. He is plays it so straight and so like full of himself. He doesn't even understand his own jokes. I mean, it's fantastic. But talking about our Steve, he's asking, it seems your words are indicating a dislike to Hollywood and celebrities. Do you have any great things to say about stardom at all? How very Steve.
Sure. I think that, there's a lot of times, with privilege comes responsibility, and power comes responsibility, and you can use it in a number of ways. And I think that's certainly indicative of people who have reached a certain platform with their work. And I've seen people use it for both privately / publicly, as in causes and things like that they brought attention to, but also in their work, it's allowed them to get work that they might not otherwise have gotten, and create films or bring awareness to us of pieces of work that we might not have otherwise seen, novels that get adapted or series that get made. And so a number of good things have come from that. But it's a slippery slope. I think it's very easy to suddenly fall into, no matter where you've come from. It doesn't take too many limousine rides to get very comfortable with limousine rides. It doesn't take too many big parties to get comfortable with, this is the world that I, and to create an alternate reality to the reality that you live in, or that to just become your reality, and to kind of forget or remodel where you came from, or, your origin story. So
it's
I think
very
it's
much
like anything. You have to be very
things.
careful. You have to be very careful when palace doors like that are opened, because the dazzle of the world can really change your perception of what is real and what's not.
Thank you. And from the fourth character, which is me.
That would be you.
That's me. And I would like to ask, I find that Beverly is the audience advocate, and yours. Would you like a definite snap in her appearance, or is it a growing conflict? We talked about this with the Missy character, because I played it like Beverly's buttons are pushed to a limit she's never experienced before. So I played it with like a courtesy, but an annoying build up, and then she snaps and she just goes balmy, as we would say in Scotland.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that sounds like the right way to go. Otherwise, there's nowhere to go. If you go too soon. I remember years ago in, I guess it was in London, I was seeing a production of Long Day's Journey into Night. And in the very first scene that Mary Tyrone walked on stage, which is a very long play. It's got the word long in the title, and it doesn't disappoint. It's long. And the very first scene, she came on and she had tears in her eyes. And I thought, whoa, we got a long way to go tonight, sister, if you're going to start crying now, And so it didn't seem to, and she found many ways to cry. Hats off to her. She found many distinct different ways to cry, but still a lot of crying. So the build, is always important, I think, to a character. The journey, sometimes the journey is very short that you make as a character. They can't all be as long as others. Sometimes you're only on stage for, a couple of moments, but that variety is really what you look for, is how that build goes. And I think Bev is best intentioned.
That's how we try to convey that she's trying to please, she's trying to beg, she's trying to fit in, she's trying to mimic, she's trying to please, she's trying to serve, but none of it works.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's just, and it becomes more and more absurd. And I think she goes in already like, what are we talking about here? Why would we even be talking about this? And yet she, out of pure sort of civility and love of this other person, I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna respect you enough to listen to what's being said. But it just keeps coming out in this inane, crazy, ever-growing nonsense that, how does one, no matter how normal you are, how can you not react by the time all those buttons have been pushed? So it sounds like you're following the trajectory that makes the most sense with Bev.
And now Beverly, she's got a question here. Where do you go in LA to have a conversation of worth?
A movie theater. Because you can't have a conversation, and hopefully
I'll let her know.
That, or a museum, go to the Hammer Museum, go over to Pasadena to the Simon Museum or something like that. The LA County Museum is beautiful. Those places. Go run up Runyon Canyon like they do in the show with their dogs. Get out. That's one of the problems with LA. It's so incestuous. It's so insular that everywhere you go, the conversation is the same. You're surrounded by people in the business or who want to be in the business, and it's constantly, this narcissistic circle, around itself. Even in New York, you don't get that same sense. There's the people who might be in the business, and the people next to you couldn't give a shit. They're there on vacation, and they don't want to listen to your, bullshit about the theater or films. So I think you get a greater sense of the world at large in a place like New York than in LA, which is just kind of serving itself over and over. And that's not completely true. Those are kind of cliches of those two cities, but cliches come from somewhere. And having sat in enough restaurants to know that, it's kind of the conversation everywhere you look. It is harder to find, just people who want to talk about anything else. It's refreshing.
And now our director, Jeremy M. Thomas, would like to ask, do you think that the characters will ever make that movie?
I think if given half a chance, yes, they will. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that people make movies. Money, desire, interest, vengeance. People make movies for that reason. I think that Karen and Steve are on the wheel and want to be on that bad enough that, in fact, they probably would, if given the chance, talk themselves into a place where they can believe that it's of worth, that the movie is going to be good for them. It's going to be, they're making something of quality. They're working with people who are interesting and worthwhile, and they certainly could talk themselves into it. Whether the movie gets made, there's so many things that keep people from making them, from taking apart and doing that sort of thing. But I think that if they're at the place where they're asking their loved ones if they can do this, I think they're already there. They're ready to do it.
And then next question is, well, we kind of started with that, if you could tell us about your upcoming projects, but I know the answer to that. You can't, because it's LA.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to talk too much about what the story is, but I've done a couple of films in the past year or so. I did a little very small, like dark chamber piece horror film with just 4 actors, which was a lot of fun, called House of Darkness. I just finished a sort of I don't know what you would call it exactly, but a movie kind of like Body Heat or The Postman Always Rings Twice, with Diane Kruger and a guy named Ray Nicholson, and that's called Out of the Blue. So I've been keeping busy and writing some plays, and had a play open in Germany this past year called The Answer to Everything, which is a fun play. I hope it gets out your way one day soon. I opened a new play in St. Louis a few months ago called Comfort, which is a man and a woman, small cast. So I'm trying to keep things out there, trying to keep working.
Well, you now have an invitation, and we would all love to meet you in Copenhagen and be your guide.
It's a beautiful, beautiful city, and I'm a huge fan of that part of the world. And it wouldn't take much to get me to come over, because it's really a great part of the world.
Well, maybe then Hit Copenhagen should collaborate a little bit and have you over to direct or present.
I would be more than open, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for taking time to doing this with the
My pleasure.
Pacific time change, and it's evening here and it's morning for you, and I know you have a busy schedule, so I just want to thank you so much for letting me not only record this but also use it for our future guests in the theatre. My pleasure. All right, you take care of yourself and have a great another great run with the show. Thank you so very much. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.